One of the things that I've been speaking against over the last several years is this wicked business that's mamash the Satan himself attacking Am Yisrael again with cash advance. In so many words, lending money with high interest. Now, everyone knows that a Jew is not allowed to lend another Jew money and charge him interest. Now, of course, there's if a Jew is a mechalel Shabbat, his halachic treatment is as if he's a goy. So technically, if you did charge him interest, you're allowed to. Rav Ovadia paskins that way, and many other paskin that way, but they don't recommend you doing it anyway, simply because it'll get you used to charging Jews interest. And number two, if he does tshuva, you have a very serious problem. So generally speaking, Jews charging other Jews interest is a very, very bad idea, because whoever's involved in the transaction, whether it's the lender, the borrower, the broker, all of them have no olam haba. All of them are in very, very serious problems. So you would think, oh, this is clear cut, this is known already throughout all of our history. What's the problem? The problem is that Jews are known for being in the lending business throughout all of history. Even from the time of Shlomo HaMelech. Shlomo HaMelech made a Takkanah. Jews are not allowed to be in the lending business and charge interest. Not Jews and not Goyim. Of course, not everybody listened. And throughout all of history, we've had many, many problems because of it. So now, over the last 20, 30 years, this horrific business of cash advance has picked up its steam, and it's caused a lot of trouble, where the majority of the most successful companies in that business, in that high interest lending business, are not only Jews, but they're Jews that are religious. They have the shtreimel, they have the hat, they have the rabbinical title, they have the kollel background, they have the yeshiva background, and so on and so forth. You go into an office, you think it's a kollel. You go into an office, you think it's a yeshivat mir. But the reality is, it's a world apart. It's a world apart, and it's an entire industry. It's not one or two companies. We're talking about hundreds of companies. We're talking about billions and billions of dollars that are being lent, and they're being lent at very, very high interest. The normal bank rates today with low interest rates, 4, 5, 6%. If you have bad credit, let's say 10, 12, credit card, 25%, that's it, finished. Other than that, go to the mafia if you want to pay more. But in so many words, that's where it goes. Cash advance business, if you have a really nice guy and he's not an outright murderer, he's going to charge you 45 to 50%. But if he's a standard, normal cash advance person, 80 to 400%. Now, this is gezel. It's not considered lending. It's considered stealing. I had an event, I was sitting with Rav Gidon ben Moshe just last week. I was talking to him about this business. Rabbi Yaron ben Moshe is not only one of the Gadolei Hador, but he's also the Av Bedin of business in Yerushalayim. Meaning, you're not going to get anyone that knows more about business in the halachic aspects of it than Rav Gidon. I'm starting to tell him about it. Within the first few minutes, he said, "You ruined my dinner." I said, "Well," he goes, "This is gezel, what you're telling me. It's just stealing. You're telling me Jewish people are dealing with it?" I said, "Not just Jewish people, rabbis. We're talking about people that are, frumer than frum are behind this business." He says, even Heter Iska would not work on such a business. Before I even told him that they give Heter Iska, he already told me, even Heter Iska is null and void for such a business. You can't use Heter Iska for such a thing. 40%, 50% interest, 400%, needless to say. So now, Rabotai, what's happened is that we have a history of this. I've done a handful of shulim, maybe more, maybe 10 shulim or so, give or take, about this business with all types of sources from the Torah about how it's forbidden. Rabbi Ephraim, God bless him, he wrote a tshuva, which BeEzrat HaShem we're going to publish in the next Sefer, Achtor Israel. 17 pages, halachic tshuva, and in so many words, when you read this tshuva, if you understand what it says, you have to be a Talmidei Chacham a little bit to understand some of the lingo. But you understand this tshuva, and you don't even know how did somebody get himself to such a hole. Because the hole is so big here, it's so obvious that it's a hole. You're like, this is the Grand Canyon. How did they not know? How did these rabbis not know and continue not knowing and continue writing Heter Iska for this illegal business? This business that's full of corruption, this business that's full of Chilul Hashem. And in this Tshuva, Rabotai Yekarim, you're going to see a few things where it's literally unbelievable that there are actually any Jewish people, needless to say religious Jewish people, in this business. There's actually a point of why I'm giving and why I'm telling you this, believe me. It's not just just for another shiur to be out there, which I'll get to in a moment. Here he says, first and foremost, a person needs to know that lending money and charging interest has a lot of problems altogether. That we already covered. Many of the Chachamim, including Shlomo HaMelech, forbid it. Forbid charging interest. Now you're going to tell, yeah, they forbid it for the Jews. No. The prohibition is to not charge Goyim interest. It's needless to say, the Torah forbids you from charging Jews interest. The Torah already forbids you charging interest. When the Chachamim got involved into it and started clarifying the law, it says, no. Now you also have to understand that there's also a limitation of what you're allowed to charge the Goyim. People think that if you're allowed to charge the Goyim interest, you're allowed to charge whatever you want. Some say you're not allowed to charge them anything. But some that say that you're allowed to charge them say that it has to have only one of two conditions. Either because you're a Talmidei Chacham, and therefore you have a limited amount of time to work, because you're learning Torah all day. So you do, let's say, one loan a month, just to make ends meet. Or you're only doing it just enough to make ends meet. You're not a Talmidei Chacham, but you're doing it just enough to pay your minimum bills, not your luxury, your boat, and your second car, and your fifth house. No, you're doing it, meaning even the ones that allow charging the Goyim interest, limited to two categories. Either you're a Talmidei Chacham, and since you're going to deal with with other people that are Goyim, you're not going to be affected by them because you're learning a lot of Torah. If you're a Talmidei Chacham and you're in that level, you're allowed to do as much as you want of it. On the other hand, if you're a regular person, you're allowed to do it. Minimum amount, the maximum amount is just to pay your bills. But literally, you're living, just a few lines above poverty level. You're not building any mansions with this. So now the Ran, one of the Rishonim, says, in his generation, 800 years ago, how did all of the rabbis that allow these lending to happen and all of the people that are allowing themselves to be in the lending business all turn into Talmidei Chachamim suddenly? Because surely they're making much more than what they need to live. They're doing a lot more. And we're talking about 800 years ago. So they must be Talmidei Chachamim. How could they all be Talmidei Chachamim? I've never heard of any of these people. So if he's talking about in his generation 800 years ago, needless to say in our generation, all of these people, okay, so you're religious, you keep Shabbat, you went to yeshiva for a few years, but it doesn't make you a Talmidei Chacham. The more you read Talmidei Chachamim, the more you realize how far, people are from Talmidei Chachamim. So how did everybody become Talmidei Chachamim all of a sudden? They could do this. So now, the exceptions that are actually made are so precise that most Chachamim, they talk about this as this is obviously forbidden. And again, it's not forbidden just for the Jew. The Jew is already a pshita. Everybody knows you're not going to lend the Jews money. We're talking about lending money with interest to Goyim. But now the lending money with interest to Goyim that everybody's talking about, that it is permissible under those conditions, what kind of lending is it? It's lending with interest. That maximum rate is what's permissible by the government. That's the average rate. Meaning, let's say if it's bank rates, the bank is average, let's say 10%, that's what you're allowed to charge. You're not allowed to charge 15% or 20% or 15%. No, you're not allowed to do that. So needless to say, you're not allowed to charge 50 and 100 and 200%. No one allows that in history. Even the most liberal of opinions doesn't allow such a thing. That everyone conclusively calls gezer. That's outright stealing. So now the Chachamim are saying here that this is not a recent problem only. This is a problem that many have been trying to toil into to permit it and to try to make money out of this situation for years by twisting halacha. their opinions were twisted, their minds were twisted, so they said, listen, yeah, but you have a Rambam that says that, in a pasuk in the Torah, it says that Nochri tashich, that you're not allowed to charge the Jew interest, but the Nochri, you charge interest. So the Barbanel says, no, you're not understanding the verse. You're not understanding the Rambam. It doesn't say that there's a mitzvah to charge the Goy interest. What he's saying is, if you're a Jew and you're borrowing money from the Goy, make sure to pay him the interest that you agreed to pay him. La Nochri tashich. The Nochri, the Goy, that you agreed to pay him interest, pay him the interest. Why? Because if you don't pay him the interest, it's Chilul Hashem. So make sure to stand by your word. That's all it says. That's what the Barbanel says. You thought that what you think that Hashem says is a special mitzvah to charge the Goyim interest. Why? And anyway, even if you want to say La Nochri tashich, that you're allowed to charge the Goy an interest, where do you see a Nochri in the world today? Who is the Nochri? The Nochri is the 7 Canaanite nations. That's who the Nochri is. Edom and Ishmael, they're not the Nochri, they're not the Canaanite nations. Edom and Ishmael, they're called in the Torah Achicha. They're called your brothers. Meaning that even if you want to use the permission to the verse to say that charge the Nochri interest, you still can't charge the Christians and the Catholics and the Arabs the interest. You still can't do it. Why? They're not Canaanites. There's no Canaanites in the world. So here you see that when the Chachamim toil with this, you're like, wait, how does somebody allow this still? What are they relying on? What are they relying on to allow an entire empire of business to literally make billions of dollars? And many buildings are being built, because some religious buildings are being built because of the money that's being made from this industry. And I would say many are being built because of this industry. What are they all relying on? That's the one thing that you keep scratching your head and trying to figure out. It's not like, okay, if you're talking about the secular world, people that are connected to pornography, they're connected to casinos, they're connected to all types of, bad things. It's like, yeah, they're relying on nothing. They're relying on their own opinions. But here you're talking about rabbis.